Time for another quick take with the Real Estate Law Podcast. Jason Muth here. If you're wondering, what's this background? This is part of our place in Provincetown. I'm here in town for Pride Away Stays. Got some business in just a little bit. But wanted to revisit this episode with real estate attorney Belinda Schwartz out of New York. We recorded this in late December 2022. So think about the world back then. People were still working from home, working remotely. People were calling for the end of cities. You know, downtowns were kind of still vacant. People didn't want to go back to the office. Fast forward to today, there's a lot of tech layoffs happening right now. There's a lot of businesses that suddenly got their power back where they have to tell employees it's time to come back in. We've seen evidence of some businesses actually, when they set their layoffs up, which is happening a lot right now, the remote employees are some of the ones that are actually getting laid off before the ones that are coming back to the office. So with Belinda, this was a really interesting conversation that we talked about the death of cities, just at the very beginning of this quick take. She didn't believe that cities were dying. You know, we asked about the rural brokers that thought everyone was going to be living in the suburbs and rural. And back in the day, year and a half ago. Maybe that was the case, but now there is a shift back to the urban core. Cities are once again doing well. People are being forced back into the cities to work. Maybe not 5 days a week, but 3-4 days a week. If you've noticed, traffic seems to be lighter, at least here in the Boston area, Mondays and Fridays, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it is a beast. Probably the same in whatever city that you are. The second part of this quick take actually talks a little bit about being a working female in this profession, because it is very male dominated, and you know, some of the struggles of going down the mommy path, as Belinda mentioned it, and how that affects progress for women's careers. So have a listen to this quick take. Remember what the world was like back when we recorded this, in December of 2022, and how much of that has come true and how much of it has shifted right back to what we were doing pre-pandemic.
One thing is probably too easy of a question, but I know a number of real estate brokers in rural estates who are celebrating the death of the city, that everybody was leaving the larger cities and their markets were that of the future. What do you have to say about that? Have we seen long-term march away from the cities, or is that just wishful thinking on the part of the rural real estate brokers?
It's a great question. I wish I knew the real answer to that, but I would say this. I don't think we should give up on urban cities. I really don't. I think that in the end, younger people enjoy living in more densely populated areas. I think people don't like having a longer commuting time. I think that a lot of people enjoy culture and entertainment and things like that, and those build community. And so I wouldn't give up on urban living yet.
Yeah. I'm going to echo that also. I just spent 20 years living in the city of Boston, like in Boston proper. And you have to talk about demographics here as well. And, how many people are in these cohorts. Everyone talked about the millennials, but the millennials are in their 40s now, right?
Yeah.
So now it's Generation Z is coming up next, and whatever the next generation is called. And you're right. It's all about community. And having lived the life that I've lived, you can look back and see the different stages. Whereas when you're 20, you don't know the stages that are ahead, right? So, I know what it's like to be post-college. I know what it's like to be, number of first relationship, second relationship, what have you, start to settle down by that first place. I've seen the life cycle as somebody that lived in the city, and I don't see that changing. I just don't, especially with as many people as we have who are coming into their late 20s, 30s, late 30s. You said it right there. I mean, culture, family, community, meeting people. The cities are the way to go. The country, the suburban places, the smaller cities, there's nothing wrong with these places at all. In fact, a lot of the benefits of those are smaller versions of what the cities can offer. But, New York City has just been the melting pot, obviously. We could say that for many, many generations of immigrants coming in there. People live there because it's close to where they work. But community and the culture elements of what a place like New York can offer are going to be the continued draws to draw people in. And you could rinse and repeat and say that about Philadelphia and Boston and Miami and Dallas, Houston, Seattle, whatever, all these big, big cities. COVID was a test, right? But look what's happening now.
Yeah, but I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
That aside, what development looks like in the city, though, certainly has changed. We've seen the death of certain categories of movie theaters, of the suburban shopping mall, of the office to some degree. So what's ahead for commercial development that, how is that going to look different in the next decade than it did a decade ago?
Well, first of all, as I said earlier, there really is not enough residential being built. I mean, there just isn't. And rents are very high in New York City. And it's not healthy for us, I don't think. And in the long term, the question is whether we, think for a minute about the financial downtown, right? When I started out as a young lawyer, there was nothing residential down there. I mean, nothing. Very little restaurant, very little shopping, nothing to do down there. And with the right incentives, community can be built. Battery Park City is amazing. The High Line is beautiful. So I think we just need to really be creative and find ways to repurpose some of the street retail and some of the office, certainly. But unfortunately, that requires some political heft. And, it's hard to find community around politics these days.
Yeah. Is that our politics the impediment to building more residential and converting other uses into residential?
Well, I wouldn't blame politics entirely, right? It is hard to repurpose an office building in the middle of Midtown into residential, just purely from a construction perspective. Mm-hmm. But some of the requirements that we have, regulatory requirements, are not really of this moment. They date back quite a few years. So I think it's a combination of politics and also maybe a lack of imagination on all of our parts.
Mm-hmm. With your level of experience, having worked in New York real estate for so long, and in your role, can you talk a little bit about the importance of building relationships with people at other firms within City Hall? You probably have a really deep network, is what I'm guessing. And my hunch is those are things that happen over time. Maybe you didn't notice it as you were building that network, but now looking back at it, can you comment on just the value of having that deep Rolodex and how that could benefit not just clients, but just anyone that's getting started in this space?
That's a really good point. I didn't realize how important it was when I first started out. And now, of course, it's everything. At the end of the day, it means if I don't know the right person to call, I can call somebody who might know the right person. Somebody can make an introduction for me. You can speak to somebody about a concern that you have. And honestly, it's everything to me. And it's really made my career what it is today. And actually, it's one of the things I worry about for younger people, that they don't see that, and they don't necessarily value that. Professionally, I think it's pretty critical.
I mean, I think that goes hand in hand with kind of the commercial development, kind of this hybrid working from home, prevents the young people who are entering a space from really making those connections, because doing it remotely, is not the same as building these connections. I mean, I think that kind of interestingly goes hand in hand, where cities and urban development, I think, is meant to facilitate connections. That's the purpose of cities. That's the purpose of the commercial construction. Is there any hope that this trend is going to reverse itself? And I ask you that not just as an expert in commercial development, but you work with your own firm, with your own connections. Do you see any of those networks being rebuilt in the post-COVID era?
I do think they're being rebuilt, but it takes it's hard. It takes effort, and it takes it really takes you doubling down your energy on these connections and not taking things for granted, not taking people for granted, not taking your networking contacts for granted. You have to work. Work is work. You have to work it. But, I've been told I'm a bit old-fashioned, that younger people have said to me, I'll say to them, don't come into the office and you could have lunch or dinner with your colleagues or hang out and have a drink. And they're like, if I want to do that, I'll do that with my friends. And maybe I should say, because, I'm older, maybe I overvalued that aspect of my life, and maybe they're undervaluing that, and maybe there'll be a rebalancing where sort of you find that good balance between your work, your personal life. But I certainly think I would tell people that it's critical to come into the office or to meet clients or network.
We do have an interesting dynamic of people in the workforce now, because we've had people that are probably in their mid-20s haven't really gone to the office that much, right? They graduated into a pandemic. They might have been working from their bedroom. Maybe they're going back to the office now a little bit more than they were. And we have people that are older. I mean, I'm in my late 40s, and I remember I love the benefit of working remotely. I mean, like, just how convenient is this? Like, I built my relationships already. Like, I know a lot of people. I know where to go find those people now, and I have credibility that I could speak to both experience and other people who I know to be able to continue with those relationships. And then there's the in between where, you're still in that developing your Rolodex. I keep saying Rolodex, but that's dated too, right? I mean, isn't it? Like, we're thinking about business cards and an actual
exactly.
Rolodex. It's like having the save icon, right, at the top of the document, where young people are like, "What is that little like black thing?" It's like, that's a floppy disk, right? That means save. I don't know where things are going to end up. I do see everything rebounding. I think that the pendulum is shifting a little bit more back toward going back to the office with the amount of layoffs that we've seen lately in all industries. And I think that, employers are getting a little bit more empowered, and maybe workers are seeing that and saying, okay, I should probably go back and maybe start building these relationships. And that will lend to the cities rebounding even more than they have, right? Because there was obviously a dearth of people walking around cities 2 years ago. And that is not the case now, at least in Boston. It's certainly not the case. Traffic's back, people are back, but traffic's back. Same thing as New York City. Let me shift gears a little bit, because I want to talk about your mentorship work, because you do a lot of work with women in your space. And I'd love it if you could talk a little bit more about what you're seeing in some of the younger women that are graduating college, graduating graduate school, graduating law school, entering your space, entering legal, commercial real estate. How are you able to empower them to get out onto the right foot in a space that is admittedly very male dominated for many, many decades?
And it still is.
Yes.
I think that most importantly, you lead by example and you lead with honesty. And I think pretending that it's easy is a mistake. And I think you need to make sure that you tell your stories and you tell people that it is incredibly hard to balance everything and to break into an industry that's dominated by one group. But, you don't give up, and you keep pushing and pushing, and you do it with a smile and a laugh. And, you just keep doing it. And I try really hard to be honest with people, to be sympathetic, to bring them to pitches, to introduce them to clients, and just to make sure that they feel supported. I had very good training as a lawyer. I was taught how to be an excellent lawyer, how to be creative, and how to think like a business person. But I did not have a mentor who taught me how to achieve, which in the legal profession is really to bring in business. That's where you own your space. When you have you have business, you're a generator of money. I've also told people women, that there isn't one way to do this. And even though I did not have those options, right? If you had a child, you were considered to be on the mommy track. And I did not want to be on the mommy track, but that now you can have a little bit of a more fluid path, and that you can get on and off the train, on and off the track, whichever analogy works. It doesn't have to be forever.
Yeah, that's, excellent advice. Like, we obviously haven't had to deal with being a woman in a male dominated space like you have. And, those words, I would encourage you to rewind them if you are a female listening to this, if you're male too, because I think it's important for men to understand, what it's like to be a woman in the space. I don't want to use the word plight. I want to use the word experience, right? Because it shouldn't have a negative connotation. It should have this is a different connotation, and we need trailblazers like this, people who can carry the torch through a difficult profession and pass it on to people and explain to them what it's like that succeeded for you, that might succeed for them as well. All right, there's another quick take with the Real Estate Law Podcast. For the full episode, go to YouTube or Spotify or iTunes or wherever you heard or listened to that quick take. We also have all of our episodes posted at realestatelawpodcast.com. So on behalf of Rory Gill, I'm Jason Muth, one of your hosts, and we thank you for listening.